Just want to introduce Professor PLO Lumumba. I'm not going to say many words now because, please, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You may now resume your seats. Let me start by saying how thankful I am for the invitation that now sees me standing on this podium. The young volunteers who have taken time to ensure that the processes leading to this gathering are success, I salute you. To the individuals in different parts of the United States who have facilitated this visit, I also salute them. I always tell my friends that when you want to know that an African has acclimatized in the United States, there are few tests that you perform. And one of them is when in Cincinnati, when they start saying Cincinnati, then you know they are now properly acclimatized in the United States. And when they are in New Mexico, when we were learning geography, there was a particular place in New Mexico which our teachers very confidently told us Albuquerque. Then we discovered that is Albuquerque. Then you know that they are in the United States of America. And of course, we come and ask for water and they say water. Then we know they're in the United States of America. But that aside, the significance of gatherings such as this is not because they give us the opportunity to deliver, but to talk about very practical things, particularly as it relates to the continent of Africa. The continent of Africa is the mother continent, and this we say times without number. There is not a single part of the world that has not known the benefit of the continent of Africa. Many of you will travel to Europe, to Brussels, which is the headquarters of the European Union. If you for one moment imagine that Brussels glitters, it glitters because of the minerals that she took from the Republic of Congo. If you stand at the entrance of the Buckingham Palace in the United Kingdom, which is not so united anyway, you see the gold there. It is true that that gold came from Ghana, which they referred to as the Gold Coast. And if you then are invited by an Englishman for a cup of tea and claim that it is English tea, that tea will have come from Kenya in Africa. And if indeed you go to Switzerland and they talk about the Swiss chocolate, however christened, that chocolate will have come from Cote d'Ivoire or Ghana or Togo. And if you go to many capitals of the world and you see electricity, perhaps some copper from Zambia was utilized. And if you come to this great United States of America and you desire to talk about her greatness, it is and daughters of Africa, spirited from her several years ago, that worked themselves to death to make this continent great. And if you go to Brazil, it is the same thing. And we say all these things to remind us that Africa has touched every part of the world. And there is a sense in which, gone through that furnace of trials and tribulations, the continent has been traumatized. And this trauma has undermined her. Many times that we talk about the division of Africa on that infamous day in Berlin in 1884, and we talk about it casually if it was a historical event now fossilized in history. Yet its impact is as alive today as it was those years ago, and Africa continues to suffer because of the and rapacious events that took place in Berlin in 1884. Conflicts that undermine Africa's growth and development were manufactured in Berlin. So that today, when you look at the continent of Africa and you see Mali is underachieving, or Chad is underachieving, or Burkina Faso is underachieving, it's not only because of Berlin in 1884, but because of the courtesy of Berlin, that the French still treat that part of the world as if it were a fiefdom of France. It is because of those activities that when we seek to do things as a continent, there is a sense in which for some reason we have now been persuaded that if the Portuguese were present in Cabo Verde and Guinea-Bissau, then the Cabo Verdean and the Guinea-Bissauen is different from the Liberian, and that does undermine us. And indeed, that is the very same attitude that we have when we go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we are quick to be reminded that the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo are different from the people of Central African Republic. These issues may be discussed as historical curiosities, but they are not, because Africa continues to be weighed down by these events. Indeed, one may say that heritage continues to be like an albatross on the neck of Africa, and indeed in many ways her Achilles heel. But we have now taken a solemn vow that we cannot continue to be consigned in that corner of history and continue to labor under a perpetual state of lamentation. And that is why we are now beginning to ask ourselves the very important question, what it is that we can do in order to ensure that the continent of Africa does not continue to punch below her weight. And indeed, this question is one that has traveled many Africans, or those who belong to the continent of Africa, or those of our sons and daughters who live in the diaspora. On the 5th day of the month of April in 1906, a young South African, whom some of you have read about, sometimes referred to as the father or the founder of the African National Congress in South Africa, Pixley Kaisa Kase, was participating in a debate here in the United States at the University of Columbia, and he delivered a speech which then was to inform succeeding generations of African freedom fighters. And the title of that speech, which I commend to you to read, is The Regeneration of Africa. And the word regeneration was used very deliberately, and I use it very deliberately. Because when we talk about the regeneration, we mean that there was an Africa which was performing at a certain level, but she was reduced in her level of performance, with the consequence that she now punches, as I've already said, below her weight, and she punches below her weight in the arena of economics. She punches below her weight in the arena of military strength. She punches below her weight in the political arena, and many are the times that when she is invited to the dinner table of the nations of the world, she is not invited as a diner, but she is invited as a waiter to wait on other civilizations. And we are now convinced that that position must pass. And we are posing to ourselves the question, how can that be reversed? And we are conscious of the fact that there are 1.4 billion or 1.5 billion individuals who are in the continent of Africa, but we are also aware that there are nearly 400 million individuals of African origin to be found in all the continents of the world. They are to be found here in the United States of America. They are to be found in South America or Latin America, some would prefer to call it. They are to be found in Australia. They are to be found in Asia. They are to be found in Europe. And some of them came here and willingly their ancestors had been enslaved. And some, and that includes most of you who are present in this arena, have come here in search of knowledge. And you came here in search of knowledge, in the knowledge that that knowledge would be used and would be deployed in the mother continent. And you are now serving this continent in different capacities. So that indeed today, when you look at the Africans in the diaspora, if you want to look at some of the best doctors that Africa has ever produced, you come to the United States of America or you visit Europe. If you want to find some of the best engineers that Africa has ever produced, they come and they are resident in this continent. If you want to look at the best architects, they are to be found here. If you want to look at some of the best lawyers, they are possibly to be found here. If you want to look at the best academicians and researchers, they are to be found here. And despite the fact that they have geographically relocated from the mother continent, there is something that is resident in them and alive in them that asks them the quintessential question: what can we do in order to contribute to the development of the mother continent? And that is what legitimizes this gathering this evening. You are here because the question is being posed to you rhetorically: what can we do so that the mother continent can realize our potential. During the short period that I've been here, I've been asked many questions, but those many questions can actually be conflated with a single question. How can we regenerate the mother continent? That is the question. It may come in different permutations, but the question is, how can we regenerate her? And this is not an arcane science. It can be done, and it has been done. And many of you, in your many ways, are doing it. But the question is how to do it better. This is the question. Many of you who are present in this room are aware that it is because of your remittances every month that your families are alive today. It is because of your remittances every month that your mothers, your fathers, your sisters, your brothers are alive today, because you enabled them to go to some health facility and they were rescued by those remittances. Many of you are here and aware that were it not for your intervention, your siblings would not go to school. Many are here who have come out of their environments in Africa because the environment was hostile and they could not fulfill themselves, but yet the basis of their departure from the continent notwithstanding, they are still asking this nagging and this perennial question: what can we do to generate or to regenerate the continent of Africa? That same question that Isa Kaseme asked in 1906. You know, you are in the Western world, and many times in ordinary discourse, you talk about the fourth industrial revolution. You talk about nanotechnology. You talk about 5G. These are the things that you talk about. But I know somewhere in South Sudan, they are not talking about those things. I know somewhere in Tigray, in Ethiopia, they are not talking about those things. I know somewhere in northern Mozambique, not talking about those things. I know somewhere in Chad, in Mali, in Mauritania, in Ambazonia, they are not talking about those things. They do not have the peace of mind that enables them to talk about those things. Those are the things that are going to revolutionize and change the continent of Africa. Those are the things that we expect you to take back home. So that Africa, as I see her today, and I'm not a doctor, but I think I can be some license to use a term that is medical, and particularly in the arena of mental health, that Africa presents in a very schizophrenic way. She has a split personality. There are parts of her that can talk about the things that I've mentioned, but there are parts of her that cannot afford that luxury. But yet, we cannot allow Africa to be overtaken during this fourth industrial revolution. The question is, how are you going to facilitate that? When I look at the mobile phone, it came when I was alive and well and an adult of sound mind, the mobile phone. I've seen her grow. I remember the days when if you owned a mobile phone which was mounted in your car, it was a symbol of your social status. I remember those days as if it was yesterday. I remember when it graduated, when Nokia was the thing that you had to have in your pocket. And if you had it, you had to have every excuse to expose it to whoever was sitting next to you. I remember those days so very vividly. And I remember that there was at one time BlackBerry, and you had every opportunity to demonstrate to your neighbor that you are the proud owner of BlackBerry. I remember those days vividly. And I remember that we grew from that, and there were only things that you use for communication. But I now know for a fact that that little gadget has revolutionized the banking sector in Africa. You can sit in the comfort of this room and send money to your mother or your sister in Banjul in the Gambia, or Freetown in Sierra Leone, on Monrovia or Bangui or Mbambane in Eswatini. That is how technology has changed the world. Whether you call it wave or you call it anything else, it has changed the world. Why do I say that? That because the contribution that you are allowed, or you ought to be making to Africa, should be sensitive of the technological realities that are now rampant in the world and are changing African societies. When my good friend Dr. Nchenga was speaking and talking about Wakanda, this movie was played, it was sci-fi. That is what you saw it for. There is now an attempt to construct that sci-fi and bring it on the ground, so that Wakanda, in the manner in which he presented here, may be something that it is up there high. But if you break it down, you are simply saying that we are trying to look for African solution to African problems. That is my understanding of the Wakandization of these particular issues. So that we as people in the African continent must ask very fundamental question: what is it that we can do? And I want to say a few things so that I do not give a wordy account of what is obvious. The diaspora is critical for the next phase of the growth of Africa. The statistics vary depending on who is saying what. But there is unanimity on one thing: that the remittances that Africa receives from her sons and daughters in actual dollars is anything between 50 and 50 billion United States dollars. That is what is documented. There are other intangibles and other undocumented support that Africa receives from her sons and daughters. But because they are uncoordinated, sometimes the impact is not felt as it ought to be felt. I think it is yesterday or the day before yesterday when I told my audience that when you want to change the world, you've got to be like water, agile and formless. When it is in a glass, shape of a glass. When it is in a bottle, it takes the shape of a bottle. When it is collected in a small puddle, it is called a pond. When it is flowing, you call it a river. When it is confined by land, sometimes you call it a sea. When it knows no boundaries and separates continents, you call it an ocean. But yet, its great splendor lies in the fact that it is adaptable. I'm now suggesting you and to all of us here that one of the ways in which you can make great impact in the continent of Africa is to unite your efforts. Since I came here, I've seen and I've interacted with several organizations that are run by Africans and support Africa, people of African origin, people who are doing great things in the continent of Africa. Some of them I did not know, some I knew. But it surprises me that some of these interventions are to be found in the inner recesses of the continent of Africa. Yesterday I had the with Judge Yates, and I discovered that an organization in which he serves is active, changing lives in Kenya. This morning I interacted with Dr. Lewis, and I discovered that some of the work they are doing is changing lives in Tanzania. And many more stories that have not been told and which are known to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that Africa is a great continent and is capable of even being greater. The question that you must ask yourself and pause for a moment to ponder over is what you can do. Even as I'm here, if I was an evangelical priest, I would ask you to pause for a moment and empty your minds and think about Africa. That continent that is shaped like a question mark. And ask yourself, what question is she asking you? I'm speaking particularly to the younger generation who are present here. Ask yourself that question. You've come here to the United States of America to acquire that knowledge. How are you going to deploy that knowledge to change your village? Ask yourself that question. I'm not asking you to physically relocate to Zimbabwe or to Zambia or to Sierra Leone or to Nigeria or to Ambazonia or the Cameroon or Senegal. But I'm asking you to find a way of stretching your hands in a sustainable way and save your mother continent. There used to be a basketball player in this United States of America called Dikembe Mutombo. He did not say many wise things, but he said one wise thing. That when you have used the elevator to take you up, make sure it goes down to bring others up. You have come here via an elevator, make sure the elevator goes down. I also remember those immortal words spoken by the American civil rights fighter Jesse Jackson when he said, "Don't look at a man or a woman who is down unless you want to raise him up." Suggesting to you, for those of you who are not of African origin, forget about the images that are played by CNN of doom and gloom. There is glow and glitter in the continent of Africa. And And I'm suggesting to you that we can improve that image. Because tell me, what is there in the world that can never be made even better? That is our duty. We come from a continent whose sons and daughters have demonstrated that they are resilient. Tom Paine has never visited the continent of Africa. If you want to understand man's inhumanity to man in its ugliest splendor, ask the African. Just this afternoon we went to the underground rail and we saw man's inhumanity to man. Yet the Africa is alive and well. And once that face of us had been eliminated by Africans and other civilizations of goodwill, those whose only claim to fame is to trample Africa underfoot, brought yet another scheme of man's inhumanity to man, the colonial project. And that too disappeared somehow. And when that also lost its luster, they brought another thing called the neo-colonial project, which is a Kwame Nkrumah, the Osagyefo of Ghana, says that there is nothing more pernicious than the neo-colonial project, because it is slavery and colonialism and neo-colonialism rolled into one, but wearing a friendly mask. He compares it to the Trojan horse. That is where we find ourselves. So the 400 million people of African origin who are resident outside of the continent of Africa, what is the contribution that you can and must make? For how can you afford a sleep if you are Zambian, if your village has no potable water? How can you? Even if you sleep, sleep departs from your eyes. If you are from Zimbabwe and you know that there is 90% unemployment, how can you possibly sleep soundly? If you are from Ambazonia and you know that if you visit your rural home, you are a possible victim of kidnap, how can you possibly afford the luxury of sleeping? And if you are from Nigeria, how can you? If you are from Ethiopia and you know that 4.4 million are displaced in Tigray, how can you? Even if you wanted to sleep, sleep departs. And this is why you are here in this assembly. You would have been elsewhere, but you have chosen to be here in order that we may share our thoughts on how Africa can be regenerated. And I'm not saying the things that I'm saying because I have the monopoly of knowledge and wisdom. No. Any one of you who have been bitten by the bug of Africa could have been possibly invited here and would possibly be saying the same things with greater passion and possibly greater eloquence than I can ever master. What I'm doing is to share my thoughts with you in the knowledge that these ideas that I'm propagating are only valuable if they are cross-fertilized and cross-pollinated. Brethren, when one thinks about Mother Africa and the need for a regeneration, one can go on and on. But as a young student of economics, I was taught that there is something called the law of diminishing returns. And that law is now beginning to operate in your minds and hearts. And that law now tells me that I must conclude. And conclude I will by telling you that going forward, it is going to be necessary that we combine our efforts so that we may help the mother continent. Whatever you are doing, whatever organization that you belong to, make sure that you are coordinated. Always remember this saying, which is the saying of the wise, which is not original to me, but which I use every so often, that the ocean cannot exist in split. You cannot be the ocean, but be a good droplet. Always remember that the tree cannot be the forest, but there is no forest without a tree. Be a good tree. That is all we ask. I have no doubt in my mind that those of us who are in the mother continent, the little things that we are doing, and the little things that we are doing, if we combine our efforts, we will not change the world dramatically. But what we will have done will change the world. Because some in the United States of America, the man with whose quote I want to conclude happens to be an American, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said that if you make the world clean, don't complain. Sweep your front yard. And once you sweep your front yard and your neighbor sweeps their front yard, the whole world will be clean. And I remember Ralph Waldo Emerson also said that if a better mousetrap than your neighbor, then even if you live in the wood, the world will make a wooden path where you live. I'm asking you today to sweep your front yard and to make a better mousetrap. And together, you of African origin, whether you relocate physically to Yaoundé in Cameroon or you do it virtually, I do not care. What I care is that you are making a contribution and you are changing your village, hamlet by hamlet. It can be done, it must be done, because if it is not done, we ourselves may be done. God bless you.
I want us to give one more innovation to Dr. PLO. So I know that he would take few questions, right, from the audience. So I'm gonna go around and David Mutua. Yes. David Mutua is he's taking my MC job. I'm like, David, you don't take my job as an MC for tonight. Mutua, David, come on stage, man. Come on, David. David is a good guy, and that's my brother right here. Thanks so much, David. So David and I are gonna help with the Q&A. David, can you go around and maybe, if anyone has questions, please reach out to David real quick. Yeah, David. Yeah. There's one person in the back, David. Yeah.
So we're taking how many questions? 3. All right. We'll do 3 questions and minimum 2. So let's listen. Yes. Great. Thank you, Professor. My question is, how we or you capture a portion of this now and pass it on through mentorship, or what's being done to make sure that more PLO Lumumbas will follow?
Thank you very much. You know, Only this morning I was interacting with his students at the university, and I shared with them an African proverb that he or she who has not traveled thinks that his mother or her mother is the best cook. And I think the wisdom of saying is that the more one travels, the more one recognizes that there are many people who are doing good things. This is what has amazed me. As I've traveled across the continent of Africa, I see young men and women doing amazing things. The only difference is that a few of us perhaps have our ideas given the oxygen of publicity. What we need to do, therefore, is to share this oxygen so that younger men and women who are good things are also prominent in the thing that they are doing. And in addition to that is this thing that we call mentorship. Because if you want to determine whether you are a leader, and leadership simply means, from where I sit, that offering service that is changing lives, it makes no sense if you do not hold the hand of many others. I like making reference to this story that many West Africans will have heard, the story that is told in Chinua as Things Fall Apart, or I think it is also repeated in the book No Longer at Ease, where one of the people is speaking and is asking, where are the young suckers that will grow when the old banana dies? And you yourself are involved in very many initiatives and are involved in initiatives, and I'm quite certain that there are men and women who are following what you are doing. The saying goes that as mother cow chews, baby cow watches and sees how it is done. And to me, that is what mentorship is all about. The mother cow that is chewing and the baby cow is watching so that they can even perfect what you are doing. Because there is no greater recompense for a teacher than to produce pupils who surpass him or her. And from where we sit, through our foundation, through our presence in 38 countries within the continent and 10 outside of the continent, what we are trying to do is to ensure that we energize people. And you don't change people. You find somebody is good in a particular area, then you energize them in that area. You don't want to clone people. You don't want to create people who are like yourself. So that is the way we are doing it. And I hope that all of us in this room are trying to do things of that nature. Many of you are already doing that. Just continue doing it even better. Thank you. There's a
All right, now we get the next person for the question. We go to the young man here.
Professor PLO Lumumba, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm grateful for the opportunity to express myself. My name is Aura Ujana. I happen to represent Madagascar, and I am economics and mathematics student at Northern Kentucky University. I have been in the US for 2 years now, and my presence here is, I would say, a succession of blessings from having been raised in Morocco for 7 years and then in Cote d'Ivoire for the end of high school, to being here tonight, to having traveled in dozens of countries in Europe. And I have two questions. What can I do as a college student to locally make an impact? Because for now, with the sanitary situation, I can only travel back home, so I have to be here in my classroom and with my peers. So what can I do in this area to make a difference? And my second question is for you, Professor Flo. If you were 20 years old, what question would you ask yourself? to make sure you're on the right track, to make sure you're about to press the right button, to make sure that the elevator goes down and comes back to that power. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Very, very useful questions, and I'm glad that you've really traveled across. You are in Morocco, you are in La Côte d'Ivoire, and you are from Madagascar. Those of you who do not know Madagascar, some of the longest names are to be found in Madagascar, even their own capital, Antananarivo, or their former president, Rava Lomanana. So if you... Yes, it so that tells you. And already I think you're on the right track. I want to start with the first question that you posed directly to me. That question I had when I was 18 years old. I was a Form 3 student, and I remember this very distinctly. We started a small youth club in my rural home. And even as I speak to you, the little land that I persuaded my father to give the organization is still there. And that is very important, that of course when you are young, you'll make a few mistakes here and there, and I think that is allowed. That is allowed. But the most important thing is that you must be clear about certain things. And perhaps this may sound a little artificial, because you cannot be too clear about certain things at a certain stage in your life. In many ways, you have a buffet of ideas. And as you grow older, you sample quite a number of things in the buffet. And that is where then becomes very important. Because if you are being mentored, you are then able to identify the things for which you have passion. I know, for example, in our generation, or even generation, those who are a little older than us, that there is the tendency for parents to live through you. A parent who could not be a doctor now says, we must have a doctor in our house. And you have no passion at all for medicine. And you are being forced to do this thing. Or you say, we must have a lawyer, and some of you will be familiar with this kind of thing. Yet you are son or don't be a DJ. Let the fellow be a DJ all they want. but and continentally, I think that the people of Africa in the diaspora should now even demand observer status at the AU. So that at every meeting of the African Union, you have 15 minutes to address the African heads of states and government on the state of the diaspora. And I think that is something that if you did, you can achieve. And don't, those of you who are from One Voice, this is the kind of thing that you ought to be agitating, your own organization. And you write a petition to the president of the council and the president of the union, Mahamat and Tshisekedi Felix of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And if you do it, I think it is something that they will be able to understand. Because what happens when these leaders come here, they are so shielded from the reality that what they do is that they are chaperoned from one five-star hotel to the other. They don't have interaction. The questions that they are asked are pre-arranged so that it would appear that it is random, but the people have been pre-selected to pose pre-selected questions. The answers were written before they left their homes, and the whole thing is a charade. And that, I think, is one of the things that you must not allow to happen to you. When you have a leader or leaders who want to serve you, the questions must come from the hearts and minds of men, not a Hollywood act. Thank you very much. There is a young Kenyan there who at one time I was Otieno was at one time people used to ask me, why is it that you say these things and you don't seek public office? So in the year 2007, I sought to be a parliamentary candidate somewhere in Nairobi, and he'll remember we held over 250 town hall meetings, and I was explaining things. I was waxing eloquent, saying I'll give nobody any amount of money. And on the day of the election, we discovered that the people we were talking to are not voters in our constituency. So you may ask the question. That is how I'm meeting him since I last met him in the year 2007.
Hey guys, Mwesh, we used to call him Mweshimiwa. Mwesh was a big name. Apparently things fall apart. But Mwesh, we respect you. We respect the day you've been here with us. We're happy to have you here. David, we thank everybody for just hosting this event. What I can say is this. I want you to help us. I know you can help us. I know in 2007, things fell apart. But I'm glad you're here. You're here because of us. You're here because of Africans, not Kenyans necessarily. So, let me remove my heart just for respect. What are we doing? I know everybody, every Kenyan here is doing anything they can do to help their families. We have not talked about that. People send money, people do what they have to do just to help their families. I'm going to talk about that. We are talking about investments. Already you're investing, putting your money right there. But how are we going to help each other? How are we fighting? Actually, one day I was with someone from Senegal. They speak French, I don't speak French. We have to help each other. We have to lift each other up, you know. And thank you for PLO for coming here. Thank you, JD. Thank you, everybody, for coming here. Today, if you have a question, don't go without asking. Want to just pray.
Thank you very much. What I not, the United States has been very kind to you. Because no, that is what I think it has been very. He didn't have this protection. Okay, just one more question. Let's have one more question and then we close it. Thank you. Thank you. I think let's have the lady from Senegal, or rather from Sierra Leone.
My name is from Sierra Leone, and I wanted to ask a question. So I see that you transitioned the phrase "Make America Great Again" to "Make Africa Great Again." So I wanted to know what are your 3 visions that you can give us to go home with, because I've pondered about this for a long time. I'm sure many of you have pondered. How do you see Africa be great country that it is, with our borders, with our economics, and just with our language divisions that we have? What are 3 things that you can give us and tell us that you see your vision of making Africa great again, and how we can really build that?
Thank you very much. The answer that I'm going to give you is not anything that has not been thought about. Number 1, in order for Africa to realize our potential, we must break down the boundaries. And when I say break down the boundaries, I'm not naive about it. We must allow free movement of labor, because the greatest resource in any country in the world is human resource. The ability to make labor mobile is one of the things that is going to allow Africa to realize our potential. And I say that as being very fundamental. There are a number of countries that have already done that. In Rwanda now, if you are an African, you don't need a work permit. I expect that that should happen. And under the Kigali Protocol, one of the things that Africa has also resolved is that we must move towards one passport. Once you do that and enable labor to move as item number one, then you are going to improve Africa. Number two is that Africans must be in a position where they add value to their resources. And this can be done. Professor Njenga here is already telling you we start with agriculture, just value addition. Look at pineapples that they are producing from their farms. They must move away from exporting pineapple in its raw form. It must be pineapple which is ready to go to the supermarket. Value addition is going to be very important, and particularly those of you who are in the United States of America and other parts of the world, that is one of the things that we must do to our coffee, to our chocolate, to our things. And once we do that, we will ensure that we create a labor move, create employment opportunities, and that is why we are talking about the removal of tariff and non-tariff barriers within the continent. Number 5, we must ensure that governments have policies that are enabling. And this too can be done. Because if you don't have policy positions and a legal environment that is facilitating, then you are not going to change countries. And you may ask, how is this achievable? Is by making demands. Is it happening anywhere in the world? Yes, it is happening in different parts of Africa now. You have countries that are now saying that if you are organized as people from the diaspora and you want to invest, we'll have tax holidays and all those things. And if you are taking things in certain sectors of the economy, if it is in education, if it is in health, they will be tax exempt. All these things that I'm saying are not things that are coming out of my mind, because I know that under Africa Agenda 2063, they have been articulated under the 7 pillars of the African development for 2063. And they've also been re-articulated in the instruments of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And if you look regionally, they have also been articulated under the instruments of SADC, those of ECOWAS, those of Central Africa, those of the East African Community, and those of Maghreb. What we ought to do, in my view, is to go into a phase of implementation. I was telling somebody in the African Union, Africa is a graveyard of beautiful instruments which are honored in breach. Let us pose this idea of coming up with more instruments to implement, and you would be shocked. There is not a single area that you and me can think of which has not been articulated within some instrument of Africa. I was telling somebody, look at the area of medicine alone. As early as the year 2001, on the first day of April in Abuja, in Nigeria, African governments met and said, we are each going to dedicate 12% of our budget in the area of health. Only Botswana and Rwanda did it, and they were 10%. If you look at the whole idea of how only not more than 10 people in the not more than 100 people in the continent of Africa have the African passport. And if you carried the African passport and arrived at Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport in Abuja, they'll ask you, what is this? So these are the things that I'm talking about. So lastly, in answering your very important question, I would have that the African Union deliberately, through the various embassies and consulates in the United States of America, has engagements with Africans in the diaspora. And this can be achieved initially through regions. You could engage ECOWAS as ECOWAS, engage SADC, engage East African Community as East African Community, engage countries that are under COMESA. And if you do that, then you will be thoroughly educated. And when you are thoroughly educated, then you go into the implementation phase. And these things are possible. Just to give you an example how Africa sometimes can be frustrated. Under the East African Community, we ought to have free movement of goods and services and free movement of labor. In the month of February last year, I'm visiting Sudan, South Sudan in Juba. And insist I must have a visa. When I arrive in Juba, they stamp for me that I must leave Juba within 30 days, and after the third day, I must be registered with the nearest police station. I go to Khartoum in Sudan, and immediately you arrive in your hotel, you've got to be registered with the nearest Khartoum. Now, I arrive in the United States of America on the 7th day of the month July. They stamp my passport. If wanted, I can stay in the United States until the month, the 6th of January, the year 2022. And the story I'm making, in my own Africa, I can only do 30 days. Even in Nigeria, I can only, when I arrive in Nigeria today, they'll tell me I must leave Nigeria within 30 days. You cannot grow if you do that. And look, we flew from Fort Myers in Florida. It's 3 hour, 50 minutes flight. Same country. Same currency. It is assumed, but in Africa, and I've said this before, in 3 hours from Nairobi, Kenya, I would have been in Tanzania, I would have been in Zambia, I would have been in Malawi, I would have been in Mozambique, dealing with Kenya shilling, dealing with Kwacha, dealing with Metical in Mozambique. Then we wonder how and why African countries' economies can't grow. Have you ever had any African currency called? They can't be. And these are the little things that Africa is grappling with. In the East African Community, we said that we would have a single currency, I think, by the year 2025. We can't. In ECOWAS, you try to have a currency called ECO before the French hijacked it because they want the CFA franc. So these are little things, and you have ideas. Look at Europe today. 27 countries. You move from Bratislava in Slovakia to Lisboa, and you are dealing with one currency. You have removed tariff and non-tariff barriers. You can grow. But you try to move goods from Lusaka in Zambia to Nampula in Mozambique. If there are eggs, if there are 1,000, if you have 10 remaining, you thank the heavens. So thank you very much.